We will now pivot to Sarah Jacks from Lancaster University, and I will take none of your time. Please take it away.
Thanks, Corey. Can you see my slides okay and everything?
Oh, there it is.
Okay.
Beautiful. Perfect.
Okay, good. Right, thank you. And thank you as well for inviting me to be part of this event. I'm sitting here listening to these lovely conversations, and it's just really nice to be able to sit back and reflect and to listen. And particularly around the kind of the faith journeys that people have been presenting as well. So I'm Sarah Jack, and I'm from Lancaster University, and I've labelled my talk Entrepreneurship, Faith and Social Values. And I suppose the starting point for me is really around, can entrepreneurship be about more than just money and profit? And we've touched on some of these things already, particularly in the keynote speech. Thank you. But what if we've been framing the wrong story about entrepreneurship, and that it's actually much more around purpose than anything else? So let me start with a story, not about Silicon Valley, not about a unicorn, but about someone I'm going to call Daniel for the sake of today. Now, Daniel runs a small business in his local community. It's nothing glamorous, no venture capital, no headlines, no awards, no powerful board members, just a business that employs a handful of people. But people who he knows and people he sees every day, people he has grown up with and went to school with. And then a downturn hits and work slows down. Others do not come in and orders do not come in. The numbers no longer start making sense. And from a purely economic perspective, the decision is obvious. Reduce costs, downsize, let people go. But Daniel doesn't do that. He doesn't want to do that. And he believes that he cannot do that. Instead, he keeps his employees working. And some days the work isn't even essential, but he keeps them on. He finds them things to do. He keeps them busy, and he finds the money to pay them. Why? Because he knows them. He knows their families, their situations. And because letting them go wouldn't just be a business decision, it would be a community decision. And because to him, entrepreneurship is not just about profit, it's about responsibility. And in my own experience working with entrepreneurs and communities, I've seen that the decisions that shape businesses are rarely just economic. They are human, they are relational, and often they are deeply moral. So here is the idea that I will open up, I suppose, for today, is entrepreneurship is not just about opportunity. It's about what we believe is worth building and who we feel responsible to. So we're often told one kind of dominant story about entrepreneurship, the story governments and policymakers really love, this high growth, high value, disruption, venture capital, unicorns, and of course, the Silicon Valley story. And while that story is very powerful, which it is, it's also incomplete because most entrepreneurs are not building unicorns. They are building livelihoods, they are building communities, they are building places, and they're also building survival. And this is the reality of entrepreneurship. And this makes me think that to really understand entrepreneurship, we need a different lens, a lens that includes faith and social values. Because entrepreneurship is not just an economic act, it's a social process. It happens in communities, it happens through relationships, and within systems of belief, reciprocity, trust, faith, and values. And think about this. Every entrepreneurial decision, what to build, who to hire, how to act, is shaped by something much deeper, by values, by beliefs, and by what entrepreneurs think is the right thing to do. And this is really where faith enters the picture. Not just religion, but faith as a kind of moral framework, a way of seeing the world, a belief that what we do really matters, a way of understanding responsibility, a way of answering the question, what else can I offer to others? And a belief that we are accountable to something beyond ourselves. And this is really where faith and entrepreneurship meet, in this kind of arc of responsibility. Because when entrepreneurs are embedded in communities, something really powerful happens. They don't just operate in place, they feel responsible for it. They develop an attachment, a sense that their success is tied to the well-being of others around them. And this creates something important, this arc of responsibility. is built on understanding that entrepreneurship is not just about taking, but also about giving back, and that success comes with an obligation, that building something also means being accountable for the impact it has on others. So, responsibility that is built on both moral and ethical obligations. Now, Daniel understood this. His decisions weren't just financial, they were moral and ethical and really driven by responsibility. But there's also another side of the story, because communities can support, but they can also constrain, bringing a fear of failure, a fear of judgment, pushing the need to fit in, the social pressures that come with having to fit in. And when a business fails, the consequences are not just financial. They can be deeply personal, sometimes even devastating. So entrepreneurship is never just individual, it is social. It is embedded in relationships, expectations, and norms for the good and the bad. But entrepreneurship is also a mechanism for change. But the direction of that change is often guided by faith, beliefs, values, and a sense of doing the right thing. If driven purely by economic, entrepreneurship can extract, it can deepen inequality, it can create exclusion and isolation, and it can damage communities. But when guided by faith and social values, it can renew, it can sustain, it can offer hope, and it can build futures that people actually want to live in and want to be a part of. So a critical question is not really what are entrepreneurs building, but what values are shaping what they build. Because in the end, entrepreneurship is about decisions, what resources to use, how to use them, who is to benefit. And those decisions are rarely neutral. They are moral, ethical, and responsibly driven. And faith gives entrepreneurs a compass, not just for success, but for what is right. So a moral compass to do the right thing. And social values give entrepreneurs boundaries. Community gives them meaning. And together they redefine success, not just as profit, but as contribution, not just as growth, but as responsibility, and not just as individual achievement, but as shared progress. So the relationship between faith and entrepreneurship is important, offering a framework for creating businesses that are not only profitable, but also aligned with deeper values and purposes than we often tend to think. And by integrating faith into their entrepreneurial journeys, individuals can navigate challenges with a real sense of purpose and contribute positively to society, ultimately reflecting their beliefs in their business practices. So let me leave you with this. What if the most important thing about entrepreneurship is not the idea you start with, but the responsibility that you carry when you build it? That kind of arc of responsibility. And what if people like Daniel are not the exception as we might tend to think, but possibly the reality of the everyday entrepreneur, and therefore what we might bring to our teaching when we envision the future of entrepreneurship? And thank you for listening.
Sarah, really lovely. Thank you for that. I really appreciate the values and responsibility approach to entrepreneurship. I hope that we're holding that front and center.